Hello, my friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family. Thank you guys for joining us on short notice once again.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here.
So, we're going to talk about some earth changes, and we're also going to talk about reality and a few other things that are curious and maybe even laughable, as well as some serious things. Good to see you, Misty. Good to see you, Forever Conscious Research Channel. White Porcelain, good to see you, and Nicola. The Rubber Mosquito Gen C is in the house. Much love, Space River News. Off Grid with Cosita. Awesome, so good to have you guys. So good to have you guys all joining us on a Saturday afternoon. It's pretty much picture perfect here. I'd say mid-70s again, sunshine as usual.
It's extremely nice today. Very nice.
Yeah, and there's some leaves on the ground. David Lewis, hello, brother. Zach Mitchell, much love. Hidden Nugget. Mindy L. Crouch, yes, good to see you. Glad you are making it. T. Fanjoy, much love. Zach, much love. Hoodoo Dino.
Idaho Panhandle into house. I like it. I grew up in North Idaho, so that's special for me. I know how to say Spokane.
I don't think I say it wrong. What's wrong with Spokane? Or Spokane?
You're perfect, baby. Actually, you're perfect. You are.
Perfectly flawed.
I love that. I love it.
Yeah, we're nice and warm here. Susan, good to see you. And I know I saw Stephanie and Everett in there. Mark Jones, good to see you, brother. Whitney, good to see you. Sherry, good to see Sherry as well.
Hi, Whitney. All you guys keep me sane, too. You really do. Thanks for showing up.
North Vancouver. Okay, it's been great so far in Vancouver, but today is gray and rainy. Zania. So, yeah, let's start off with this. And so here we see meet a scientist who thinks we all exist in multiple universes. It's pretty interesting, really, because pre-quantum physics, the prevailing thought was we live in something that's almost like a machine, very mechanical. There was the thought that spirituality and the physical world were completely separate, had nothing to do with each other. And, that everything was really rather, it's just kind of like God set a machine in motion and the machine is just going. But now we know it's all about the observer. It's about consciousness and that we are constantly creating our own reality as we go. And so many of the ancient truths and philosophies, like with Buddha, through all his meditation, discovering, hey, you know what? This is all an illusion. That was his big discovery. It's all an illusion. It's Maya. And now we have scientists that say, you know what? We probably live in one big holograph. It's pretty interesting what we're seeing coming about. So, we have the concept of the higher self. And boy, it's so easy to put that into the context now with today's video games, as the higher self is the one actually holding the controls, mashing the buttons. Mm-hmm. And we're the ones that are in the screen. That's what it's looking like more and more all the time. What do you guys think about that? And if there are multiple universes and every single version of you that there could be exists, think about all the key choices you made in your life. Maybe you didn't meet your future spouse. Maybe you guys met on in an airport or something where there was a delay, and otherwise you would have never met your spouse, your significant other. Well, maybe in some reality there was no delay and you never met that person, and you're with somebody else with other kids in a totally different state even, Think about all the huge decisions in our life that we make that could take us, down a completely different road. Well, I mean, maybe both versions or all versions are playing out right now.
I really like that. And another thing that crosses my mind is like, so if there's many realities in our humanness and our feelings and emotions are in this reality right now, can we tap into those other realities? Like I know when I started doing energy work, my life changed completely. And it's sort of like, I guess we all have like a soul purpose, or so our lives can go branch off in many other directions. But which one is our divine purpose? And is that why we think and feel and have emotions in the here and now, as opposed to a different timeline? But then, can't we go sit in that different timeline too? It's just, it's such a rabbit hole. I love it.
Yeah, exactly. And so, are we sitting on all these parallel universes and in a different reality? You and I aren't sitting next to each other right now. Maybe we were still with our exes, or maybe, we never got involved with anybody and, never got married to anybody in the whole first place. I mean, there's so many different possibilities. Like my best friend through high school, his whole plan the whole time was to join the Navy. And on my mom's side, it's career Navy for every single generation, and career Navy. Like they're in it from the beginning to the end where they retire. And at first, until I met my first girlfriend, I was leaning on doing that because he was doing that and he was my best friend and my family had done it. And boy, I would have been on a totally different path if that was the case right now. Wouldn't, but who knows? Would I have eventually come back to the same place?
I think eventually, like there's destiny and certain things. There's destiny and fate, and what's the difference between the two? Oh my goodness. Well, I think destiny is what you came here to do, and then fate are the little things that kind of happen on the way to your destiny or your purpose. And that's why I really enjoy astrology so much, because it sort of kind of shows you your destiny, and everything in between there is fate. So if something comes up in your chart and you're not sure what's going on, it's really cool. You can look into the transits and say, well, this was supposed to happen. Or if you have like a whole bunch of relationships, you can look and you're feeling bad about yourself, like, well, why can't I stay with like one person? Well, if you look at your chart, maybe you're supposed to bounce around that way. That's your destiny. For me, I'm a Cancer, so I'm very motherly, and I care about people, and my destiny is going to be working with many different kind of people. So yeah.
So Whitney Coulter says, I like human design. There is something called human design, which is really interesting. One of my really good friends, her name's Annalita, and she is like such an enlightened being, honestly, on a totally different level than most of the people I've met in my life. But she does human design, and it's pretty interesting because there's different types of people, and it's a combination of like numerology, Vedic astrology, biorhythms. It's a bunch of different things. I don't know if there's any of you out there that are familiar with it, but it's really super interesting. And when Cindy and I met, we just clicked at such a high level. Well, I'm a projector, so according to human design, I think about maybe 10-15% of the people out there are projectors. More than 50% are manifestors. They're basically creating energy. I should say generators. They're generators. About 50 or more percent are generators that just are basically creating energy. Projectors take the energy that is created and amplify it. And so projectors are usually people that are in public speaking in some sort of medium, like writers, for instance. And people that are just naturally, they're there to communicate something to others. And then there's manifestors that can actually make things happen so quick. And what's interesting is Cindy is a manifestor generator, which is a very, very rare combo. So with me being a projector, it's almost like the slot fits perfect, and together we really, really complement each other. I find a lot of these things really fascinating, and Cindy delves in Vedic astrology, and then there's also Western astrology. She knows more about the differences in that than I do. But I do think that when we look at, I mean, there was a time when I totally didn't think anything of astrology, nothing at all. I really didn't have any respect for it. But now as I realize that, if we are living in a computer sim, if we are living in some sort of matrix, some sort of program, then perhaps astrology is actually part of the program. It is part of the program. And so it's interesting.
Yeah, I love astrology. I study Vedic astrology, which is a bit different than Western. So, like in Western, I'm a Leo, and in Vedic, I'm a Cancer. So you kind of move the clock backwards a little bit. And then also I can pull up your nakshatra, which also tells a lot about you. And Vedic is, I think they take into account like the tilt of the earth, and also Vedic goes back like 8,000 years. They can find the records, whereas Western astrology, they can find the records for 2,000 years. And personally with me, I don't trust a whole lot of the Western system. And I think any time that they'll give us a chance to go astray, that they will. So that's why I fell into Vedic, and I just love it. And it's helped me find out a lot about myself, because my gosh, I am just such an emotional person. And I always thought that there was something wrong with me. And no, it's not that there's anything wrong with me. I'm supposed to use those emotions to help heal people and help people and work with people. Yeah. And it's all so curious. And then we bring in this thing where different timelines, I wonder if, like in astrology, if you were to punch in a different time or something and then you follow that timeline, there's just so many ways to go with it. I love rabbit holes.
And when we talk about like, how could the stars affect us? Well, from quantum physics, we understand that everything is completely entangled. It's all entangled. So, we live in basically this sea of consciousness. And how many of you guys out there believe that stars have consciousness? And I don't mean Hollywood stars, because maybe I'd understand if you said, well, maybe some sort of rudimentary consciousness there. But yeah, it's a cosmic web, and that's what we are in. We're in an ocean of consciousness, and we're all individual, basically, waves in that ocean. We're all fractals of that ocean. And really, this is what's been hidden in the West and out in the open in the East, if we look deep enough. And, Barbara says, I think everything has consciousness. I think everything is consciousness, and consciousness has bodies at times. And, it's what we are. And again, if everything is entangled quantumly, as we know, from these experiments that show that a particle could be in two different places at one time, it just shows how we're all truly connected. And that's part of this next upcoming era that we're going in which we're going to be based on unity consciousness through the heart chakra. And, recognizing the divinity in each one of us, and recognizing ourselves in others too, and if we could do that, we'll have a lot more compassion. And so getting back to, how many of you guys think the stars are conscious beings? When you think about when we see orbs, right? And I was just looking for a video somebody sent, and I couldn't find it. It was a great video on orbs or something along those lines. When we see an orb, and here, hold on to this while I go and dig it up.
Okay. So we saw a video. That's the video with all the little orbs, right? There was like tons and tons of them. And these little things are just like zooming all over the place. And it's clear when they come into the screen that they are orbs. And the ones that I have pictures of actually almost look like a fish face inside of them, which is totally cool. But the one thing they have in common is they all have a face inside of them. Or sometimes, like, I had one that had like 6 faces inside of it. So I think that's how they travel through the ether, is in that bubble of energy. And I get my orb pictures off of my camera. I have a digital camera, an old digital camera, and they pick up the best orbs. I just really, really love it. So, and then I like to go upload them on the computer and just look at the different faces, and understand and realize that I'm being surrounded by beings, which is really super cool. You know, you always, sometimes if you ever feel alone, know that you're really never alone. We're never alone.
And, I will do, because I've been planning on doing this video for a while, of exactly like what I'm going to show you now. And I will do it anyway in a full video, go in a little more depth. But when we look at these orbs, right, these are what we would call spirit orbs. And so they're different types of consciousness. They're not all dust particles. Sometimes, yes, we catch dust particles. But these things move about, in all different directions, and, fly about in crazy ways. And I've seen some that are pretty big. I used to see them all the time that were the size of anywhere from maybe a softball up to being bigger than a basketball, and just almost every single night. Now, interesting, like you see this and here, you can see a face in there, because these are beings. These are spirits. These are spirits. These are entities. They're consciousness. Look at the face in there. You could see it. So when we're out of the body, this is what we are. And I used to be haunted by my aunt's house. My aunt's house was the family home that my entire family, all my, relatives lived in during the Depression. There was like 13, 14 people living in this house. And it was a big old Victorian house, and had one bathroom on the second floor. It used to scare the crap out of me as a boy going up there. So I'd wait for my father, have to go to the bathroom before I'd go up there, because the whole house just creeped me out. But I'd have nightmares about it, and I would sense that there was an entity just flying about this house, like a ghost or something. And I used to have nightmares about it forever. I mean, decades, from the time I was a little boy. And then all of a sudden it hit me that that entity flying about that house was me. It was me out of body. It was me basically in like the astral body, or in this type of state in between lives. And so when we look at how tiny these are and the amount of light that they're giving off, and think of them as perhaps a human being, as this looks like a woman right in here. It looks so clearly like a woman's face. You can see that, right? She has dark black hair. You can see her eyes, her nose, her mouth. So Barbara Brennan says, at our core, we are a star. Let's see if it's going to... Well, I went too far out, though she is wonderful, by the way. Okay, there we go. So at our core, we are a star. We are a star. That's what we are. So when you look up into the night sky, what you're seeing are beings that are just vastly brighter than us. And so are we on our path to becoming like the stars, to becoming more like... Many people believe the stars are the angels. The stars are the devas. They are the gods even. And so if that's true, and then they all have actual personalities, just like we do. Each one of us is a unique expression of the divine, with a unique personality, unique traits. Then again, same thing with the stars, the same thing with the planets, with Earth, with Mars. Each of them have their own traits and their own personality. And think about the size of them, the type of energy they would throw off. It would be tremendous, right? Look at the size difference of some of the stars. It's just mind-blowing. Now this one's small. Let's see if we find one that's a little bit better. Yeah, that's decent size. So, I mean, you could see the size difference. And way over here is our sun. And you can see how big some of these other ones are, how much energy they have, how much light and life, light they're throwing off and life they are supporting. And as we progress, So you could see, like, our sun's that compared to how big some of these giants are. It's staggering. It really is staggering to think about it. And so, are these beings? Are these conscious entities? And if they are beings and conscious entities, then we know when we walk into a room and there might be somebody with a bad mood and it makes you uncomfortable. And it's like, God, I can't wait to just get out of this room. Even though he's 15, 20 foot away from me, I could just feel him. And he's making me uncomfortable and I just don't like it. I was in a good mood and, you can imagine that. So what if one of these entities, look at the size of these entities, these stars, and take the planets into consideration as well, because they are beings as well. Obviously, their moods and who they are, their aspects are going to influence us.
They are, and that's another thing going back to astrology is, the planet being the vessel, and then like it goes through certain, I forgot how it was worded, but when it hits, when they travel through space, the information coming through that vessel or that planet then influences us depending on where the planets are in the chart. So I thoroughly believe that they're beings, and, like our Mother Earth, she's a living, breathing being, and so many people don't understand that. I know that you guys do, because you guys are totally awesome and you're on a path to awakening, but so many others outside of our little group that we have here are not awake, and they will just slap down pavement on Mother Earth's face and not even care how she feels about that. I think at least, Native Americans, they would ask before they did anything, made any marks on her face, because they knew that she was a being.
So Zanya says, so when this body we live in dies, do we just go on living in an orb or a sphere? I think what happens is, according to everything I've researched, I think we create a construct with our minds, and not the mind that's the brain, the mind that's the true mind, the observer. So from what I've gotten, and I've had 3 really good friends that have had experiences where they've died, and actually 2 of them multiple times. And basically they find themselves in the astral body, which is still basically a representation of the physical body. So you'll kind of feel like you're still in your body. Now, over time, things could change, and there are different lines of thought, and it's really interesting to study it. But at first, we're in basically kind of this etheric astral body. The etheric body is created before the physical body. The etheric body is the blueprint that the cells actually go through mitosis and create the body according to the blueprint of the etheric body. And so the astral body can live on for a while after the death of the physical body. And, again, there's different systems with different lines of thought. Some believe that the astral will go and dissipate as well as we go back up above that dimension and make our own choices again as to coming back down, where, when, how, why, what do I got to work on, all that type of thing. And then we'll basically make a new blueprint to which a new body is built after conception, after choosing the right people, at the right time to be your parents. So, it is interesting to see that. So up in the higher states of being, we're basically more like a ball of energy, a ball of light. It's really interesting and fascinating to see. Like in the Chinese philosophy, in the Taoist philosophy, one of the main problems, one of the main spiritual entities, or energetic entities, I should say, not really so much spiritual, more energetic, they believe in Taoist philosophy that we are comprised of a yuan shen, which is like the soul, more the part that never dies, that divine spark. We have 3 hun, which are kind of like 3 angelic type of beings that are in us, which are of a higher level. And then we have 7 po spirits, and the po are made from the earth, and they are the things that give us our ego. And so that part dies when the physical body dies and should dissipate and go back into the earth itself. And the Hun may stay with us. You could think of them as angels, your guardian angels. You could think of them as your spirit guides. They're distinct from you, but they have a strong influence on you because you're the Yuan Shen. And what happens a lot of times is these Po spirits, which will look they'll look just like you. They might not want to go back into the earth and be absorbed back into the earth. And so they learn that they could feed off of people's energy and animals' energy. And that creates these ghostly type beings that eventually could become kind of demonic over time, or vampiric. They're most definitely energy vampires because they will follow people. They will latch onto people. They will create and sometimes conflicts between people by playing pranks. Or getting us to be mad at each other, and then all the energy that comes off of us feeling these emotions, these intense emotions. Now, it could be a lusting emotion, and thus we have incubus and succubus, but often they're actually human originally. They're just leftover energy from humans that should dissipate back into the earth as the soul goes back up into the higher realms. And then the 3 Hun spirits either become our spirit guides or guardian angels once again, or perhaps we're going to be a Hun spirit, a spirit guide or a guardian angel for one of them as they come back down and have something to learn. So it's pretty interesting. But yeah, a lot of the darker energies that we encounter that plague people are kind of these Po spirits, according to the Taoist philosophy, which are a remnant of us, not fully us, but basically that exist on the astral and learn how to feed off the energy of others to keep themselves going.
They do, and that's why I think there's parts of the Bible that I do agree with, even though I don't agree with the whole Bible. But that part where it says hold every thought captive, I think that's important, and make sure that it's yours, because these energies have the ability to come in and manipulate your own personal energy, and then they cause trouble, and then they feed off of it. And I can see them, like when I close my eyes, I see them in my third eye. It's a little different. Like if I see them with my 2 eyes, I kind of freak out. But when I close my eyes and I see it in my mind's eye, then everything's okay. But I know those little buggers, and I've seen those buggers cause a problem, and then they sit back and they suck off of the loosh. And, there's things that you can do, to cleanse yourself. And if that ever happens to anyone, God, for one, I'm super sorry, because I know it sucks. And then the other one is I've found that burning sage or using the tuning forks on myself has helped with that. With that standing wave of information that's trying to plague me. And I think it has a lot to do with, like, I was really sick a couple years ago, and it really lowered my vibration. So for one, I'm a target. I think my light is really, really bright, but my vibration definitely needs some work. And you've helped that tremendously. You've raised my vibration so much. And I think the higher your vibration, the less they can latch onto you and use you. But like I said, the energy work on that has done wonders to raise my vibration. And what it does is it just puts you in a whole nother frame of mind. You think differently. Your consciousness changes, which is wonderful. What do we got here?
Okay, so I think you say this Klipoth. And so it's not that it's the soul of somebody else. It's the shell. It's an energetic husk. And so there is an equivalent to what I'm talking about in the Taoist philosophy. And here if we look at Wikipedia, this is what we're talking about. So these are used in different Kabbalistic traditions, or Hermetic as well. So literally, they mean peels, shells, or husks. They are the representation of evil or impure spiritual forces, the polar opposites of the holy Sephiroth. And so they're soulless, and these things can become pretty powerful and very powerful over time. And so they're really like shells, though, because they are, soulless, so to speak, not like us at the same time. But you know what? These David says rocks have consciousness. Yeah, they do. They totally do. I mean, it's wild now. We were talking about the end of the age in 2012, and I really do think that that's when everything started to change. It really did, to a totally different level. And so we have two beautiful trees. What are they called, those two trees?
We have a Vitex, and we have
the two bigger ones.
Those are the cottonwoods, but the Vitex is down there.
The one that we were feeling the energy.
Oh yeah, that was the Vitex, or was it? I'll have to ask Mom.
But anyway, there's two beautiful trees here, and I was just like putting my consciousness into it, and I was amazed at just in a moment of putting my hands on the tree, I could sense the energy flow coming up through the roots and coming down through the leaves. I could feel it. It's almost like it's blood pulsating, even though it doesn't have blood, it has sap, but pulsating through the body in rivers of energy. It was just so amazing to feel the consciousness of the tree and the power and the energy and the balance and also benevolence. It's pretty wild how it felt. And so same thing with crystals and the same thing with rocks as well.
Those were the mesquite trees, and they are big and beautiful, and Mom has coddled those things from, pretty small. She brought them home. They were pretty little. Now they just tower over the house, and they're big and they're strong and, made from pure love from Mom.
So Raven says trees hold generational memories to their origins. And I felt just, it was amazing to feel the energy flow through it and the consciousness of it. Definitely a great old being. And it's so easy it feels easy to me now to tap into these things all around us. And we have to be rooting ourselves all the time. Mm-hmm. It's so good to root ourselves. And there is a QiGong practice where you ask first for permission from the tree to share your energy with it and its energy with you. And then you just basically sit with your back up against it, a nice straight spine, and draw in the energy with the inhale and then give back with the exhale, because, we balance each other. The plant kingdom and the animal kingdom balance each other so beautifully.
Yeah. And, another thing about a tree that you notice, of course it's rooted, but that's what we want to be also, because when you have roots, you're able to nourish yourself. So, you want to think tree a lot.
Yeah, and it is, as Barbara says, it's a symbiotic relationship, and that's how we should be with the whole planet. But this culture, is not that way. And so, it's a lot of it's how we're brought up. It really is. And so a lot of people are brought up thinking that it's there for us to dominate and to use in any way we want. And we see what that gets us when we act that way. We see what that gets us, because that's the world we're in right now. So again, if we act like a virus, we're going to get the response a virus gets from the body when it's trying to destroy the body. And that's exactly what we see, and we could touch on the earth changes. We see evacuations in place for hundreds of thousands in Bangladesh ahead of tropical cyclone Matmul. And it's been a lot of cyclones. 500,000 people from the low-lying areas are being asked to evacuate. And so it's not a super strong storm as far as wind, but it doesn't have to be, because it's the water that's killing everybody. It's the water that's been, just devastating houses and schools and obviously crops. And so this is another one. There's videos here for you guys as always. Typhoon Nakri exits the Philippines, now heading towards Vietnam. And again, this one doesn't have very strong winds. It's about 74 miles an hour, just like the last one. But again, these storms have been just parking, and we've seen that. And we were warned about that. The scientists came out with that, I want to say about a year ago or so. Maybe it was a little bit more, maybe like a year and 3 months ago. They said one of the tendencies in this grand solar minimum is going to be the tendency for storms to kind of get stuck, to just sort of sit in one place, like we saw in the Carolinas and we've seen in so many different areas. Strongest eruption at Sakurajima since 2016, ash to 22,000 feet. And we have lava effusion detected at Cleveland Volcano in Alaska. So color code raised to orange there. More and more volcanoes coming online. A month's worth of rain triggers widespread floods in northern and central England. Yeah, the UK, and you guys are going to have to bundle up. Because the weather it's been pretty tough for you guys over there. I know I talked to David Lewis almost every day, and it hasn't been the most beautiful weather. UK weather forecast: snow on the way, -8 Celsius freeze. Will it fall in your area? So here comes the cold, and parts of Britain have been hit by their first snowfall of the season. And more is on the way as temperatures plunge to -8 Celsius. And so UK is getting ready for some beautiful white weather. And meanwhile, over here, we see unrelenting snow brings chaos to northern India, kills at least 7. And, India's been hammered. All-time low temperature record smashed in Nevada. Overnight lows plunged well below zero in many parts. And a freeze warning was in effect through Thursday for the southern regions, including Vegas. So we have -2 Fahrenheit observed in Eureka. Elko's 7 Fahrenheit, which pipped. What's pipped? 1917's all-time low of 8. And Winnemucca 7 also tied the record low. So Nevada feeling the cold. And California's next electricity headache is a looming shortage. So there's going to be a shortage. And, I think most of us would agree that it seems like, especially in like California and some areas, Vegas, how much are you paying for electricity in Vegas? Pretty incredible. It depends on where you are, but where they think they could get by taking advantage of people, the power companies do. And yet, what are they doing? They're, especially PG&E with the red shirts there, red shields. They're not reinvesting at all in equipment, in upgrades. No, it's all dividends. It's all dividends. It's all profit. We know how it really is, and it's so sad. So, if you're in California, you're going to have shortages. The blackouts are here for at least a decade from what we've been told. Not a good situation. And, we wonder why so many people are leaving it as well in droves, as it is such a beautiful state, really, and it has so much to offer. But, man and the government has done such a horrible job, really, overall there. And here we see remains of a massive Jurassic sea monster found in a Polish cornfield. This beast had more bite than a T-Rex. And it was one that is a seagoing dinosaur. And so it's called a pliosaur. It was more powerful than T-Rex. And they say it lived about 150 million years ago. But why do we got carvings on rocks, that are only 1,000 years old, 2,000 years old, that tend to show dinosaurs living? That's an interesting question as well. But the other part I want to touch on, this is where they found it, right? And look where the ocean is. You see how far this is away from the water. So when the poles were melted in the warm period there, this was all just islands. The peaks of the mountains were islands. And that gets us more into thinking about what really could happen. Remember, Edgar Cayce said Northern Europe was going to be basically gone in a twinkling of an eye, is what he saw. And so, if we did have a, tremendous melt off, and I know we have different stats coming at us from every direction, as everybody is trying to convince us of one thing or another. But really, the evidence of rapid, swift climate change, even when there were no humans throwing carbon emissions into the air, or maybe there was. Who knows what technology we had really 12,000 years ago and way farther back than that. But things happen fast. Things occur very fast according to what we see. We have, as we were talking about in another video, 7 to 10,000 feet underwater in the Pacific are leftover, perhaps traces of Lemuria and civilization. And yet, at over 10,000 feet up on mountaintops, we also have seashells. So how violent does it get is the question when we have these rapid change.
Right. Yeah. It's hard to say. Something tells me that we're probably going to be okay in our lifetime. We should do the right thing, though, and make positive change, like get our health in order, have backup just in case. But yeah, even if nothing happens, it's always a good idea just in case we have any kind of unrest at all. You guys, you can at least hold your own. Absolutely.
So it's really interesting, and there's so many lines of thought into the whole nova idea as well. That seems to be one that's growing, and that it's caused by a nova. Others think it's various asteroid impacts, comet impacts, maybe. Well, this is a little bit different. U.S. Army set to test laser cannons capable of incinerating drones, planes, helicopters, and missiles. The future of laser weapon warfare has arrived.
Oh, goody.
Right? Going way back into the 80s, I had a friend that was in the military for over 20 years before he got out. And he was in Arizona. I believe it was Arizona. I'm trying to remember. Maybe it was New Mexico. But he was here in the desert Southwest stationed. And, he told me that he saw them test a laser. This is back in the late 70s, early 80s. That he said it blasted a hole clear through a big, huge mountain like nothing. So, they're telling us that they're testing this now. But it's already in effect. Has probably been for a long time. They don't use it openly in the wars. However, and I ran into this as well, where some people were saying from the opposition side, like we're talking about like ISIS, entities like that lasers were being used, over there in Iraq and Afghanistan. So who knows, really? But I think they could come out with high-tech weaponry, high-tech planes and machines that if we didn't know it was them, we would all think we're under an alien invasion.
I think this is part of the slow disclosure that they need to do. This will just get us prepared for things that we're going to see, probably in our lifetime. And I do believe, like, all of you look at the monuments over there in the Middle East and the things that they built, and there's no way that those pyramids were, or whatever it is, was put together with a chisel and hammer. That just completely insults our intelligence. So yeah, way back when, they did have a lot of these high technologies to do things with. So I do think they have to disclose it, because I think it's coming either through our guys or through a different venue, other aliens or something.
And so I see Cherry says, who is she? So this is Cindy. This is my wife. Oh. And if you haven't caught her live in a while, she's been doing all the lives with me, and she actually made a video this morning that is on the second channel. And that one is over here. You can see that on Patreon here. And it's also up on Ko-Fi. We put them up on both of those all the time. And this is the second channel, EE Arts. So if you're not subscribed to the second channel, go ahead and subscribe, and make sure you click the bell for all, because otherwise you won't get any with the new algorithms. So as we have talked about, the new algorithms, they basically take away the power of subscription. And I've noticed it too, because there's some channels that pop up and I'm like, yeah, I am subscribed. And, I checked one yesterday too, and unfortunately I was subscribed for all, and I haven't seen a video pop up in my feed from them in like over a month, probably 2 months. And, it's a damn good channel. And even though I got all, it still didn't give me any notifications, because, again, they know better than we do. At least that's what they think about what we should be watching. So, like, when our videos come out, it's always like the first maybe 3-4 hours, the videos go at a super fast pace, and it looks like it's going to have great viewership, and then it stops. And so what it is that there's channels like this one and like many, many others that are out there giving you guys this info. They don't recommend them, so it doesn't, even if it's like people are interested in the same stuff, it never comes up in their recommendation feed anymore. And that's part of what's going on. And, that's why, it's getting pretty obvious, and it's all over everywhere about what's going on with, Facebook and the parent company over here as well. Because, it is a war on, it's a war for your mind. And there's definitely agendas underway. So we do what we can, and thankfully, Patreon's been growing some, and there's been people helping with Ko-Fi as well. So that keeps us going, because otherwise you wouldn't be able to dedicate 12 hours a day to it.
No, you wouldn't. And yeah, they do like to try to control the narrative. And that's one really good way. Like, I watch your videos go out and they take off, and it's like so many people are watching it, and then after that hits around 3,000, it just drops off like a cliff, and it's insane. It's just not right. It's a lie.
But getting back to this, obviously what we have is so far ahead of what we've been shown. And I do believe my friend, that was like late 70s, early 80s, that he saw them punch a hole right through a mountain with a laser. So obviously it's there. So you have to ask yourself, why don't they show? Is it perhaps for that great big fake alien invasion that everybody talks about? And really, it'll be humans. And again, there was a Netflix movie that was exactly what the whole movie was about. You see these alien type beings roaming the streets, going house to house, and basically, getting rid of people. And then when they take off the apparatus they're in, it's just a human. In the case, I think it was a human from Texas or Tennessee or something, and it was soldiers to boot. So I think, there again, they're giving us some info. Giving us a little bit of info, and really what's coming is probably going to make our jaws drop. And here we see how live science, 2 everyday chemicals created toxic fumes that killed a Buffalo Wild Wings manager. Workers were exposed to toxic fumes created by just simply bleach and acid. So you got to be careful about what you mix. And so the worker used a cleaner called Super 8, a bleach-based solution that contains a compound, sodium hypochlorite. However, unbeknownst to the worker, an acid-based cleaner called scalene had spilled onto the floor earlier. The mixture of the two resulted in a substance that turned green, started to bubble. The worker developed burning eyes and breathing problems. Then a manager tried to squeegee away the mixture, but he developed serious symptoms and was unable to continue. The manager, who was identified as 32-year-old Ryan Baldera, later died in the hospital. 13 other people were also treated for exposure to the fumes. And so, you're not going to ever get these corporations probably to change what they're using as far as cleaners. But, we don't use toxic chemicals. And, you could always clean with natural things. I mean, there's a million uses for vinegar, right?
Yeah. Vinegar and baking soda is like my go-to for almost everything.
Yeah, I mean, what's in so many of these products? It's bad enough what's in the food, and things we're drinking and breathing. Yet, when you see what is in some of these cleaners, you could basically defend yourself in a war situation with some of these things, and that's how bad they are. It's not a good scenario. But again, it's all about profits. So Mercury is going to transit across the sun Monday on a rare show. And the solar system's smallest innermost planet will resemble a tiny black dot Monday as it passes directly between the Earth and the sun. And that begins at 7:35 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. It'll take a 5.5-hour transit going across, weather permitting. It'll be visible in eastern U.S. and Canada and all in Central and South America. The rest of North America, Europe, and Africa will catch a part of the action. And obviously, because to go without saying that we don't say that we stare at the sun for that long. And here out of the Daily Star, which, I wanted to think of as a rag and everything, but then when I go and check their stories elsewhere, other people are covering it. They are talking about a lot of these things. So U.S. government forces NASA to cut ISS feed when UFOs appear for national security. Yeah, I think that's a given. I really do think that's a given. Never a straight answer is all about suppression. And, we know its history, as we've talked about, Operation Paperclip and the bringing of the Nazi scientists in. There's just so much to this, the bigger picture here. But yeah, there's been so many cases where people have seen things clearly with these NASA feeds. I think I still have one. Yeah, I probably do. Of this blue object that was really just totally visible and really curious. But, I'm one of those people that think that we are not alone.
No, I don't see how people can actually believe that we're alone. That's very, limited, very limited mindset. And then there's other people I see that think that all aliens are demons, and that's a very limiting mindset. But I think they want us in that limited mindset, because if we find out who we are, if we find our divinity, if we find our own freedom, oh my God, they're going to be in a lot of trouble. They have us so under control, many of us under control. They got us right where they want us. They don't want us to think that things aren't truly, as they are. They want us to think what they want us to think.
Well, I did that survey of our family members, and basically it broke down to, I think it was just about 80% believe that aliens are real and that they've either been here or are here still. And, many believe that they are, some of them are in our lineage. So, yeah, very few thought that all aliens are demons. But I think that comes out of that middle age, or dark age thinking. They just didn't have names for things so much. They didn't know what they were looking at. So, I mean, if you saw a ship go by in the sky, okay, put it this way. If it's like 1600 over here in North America, and all of a sudden we have a attack helicopter, an Apache or something like that, go soaring overhead, what are the natives going to think it is? How are they going to describe it? Mm-hmm. They're going to think it's something, maybe a god, maybe an angel, a demon. They're not going to know how to describe it. What if you saw like an Apollo astronaut, land in come out of his craft, right? And you're back in biblical times, and he has his suit on. He doesn't come out of his suit. How are they going to describe that? It looks like a demon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, they just didn't have the words for it. That's part of it. They just didn't have the words for it. So they couldn't conceive of it, and we could conceive of so much more. So it's pretty obvious that they used limited terms, limited points of view. But hey, the Bible itself comes right out there and says, ye shall not worship other alien gods. Basically denoting that there's more gods, there's many different gods, and some of them are aliens. And it says that in more than one place. So again, it's pretty interesting when we look at it. And then also just the fact of not wanting to let on to the bigger picture. So obviously the church was a very, very powerful entity, still is. And some say that really the church is higher up than the 13, bloodlines that we hear spoken of as well. And as, demons, it's all an evolved concept. And it's so interesting how it evolved, because these things evolve over time. I've shared with you guys many times, Charles Taze Russell is the founder of Jehovah's Witnesses, who said the world was going to end about 100 times. They kept changing it. And he is was a 33rd degree Mason, right? So he's part of those creating this mental and, religious matrix for us. And Joseph Smith, who founded Mormonism, is a 33rd degree Mason. Another one of those that is manufacturing our construct for us. And we could go on to Charles Darwin, giving us his version of Darwinian evolution, which many people can find fault with. And, most of us, have issues with at least some parts of it. And yet, he's another 33rd degree Mason. So these secret societies, they control us, they infiltrate us, they're all over. Sure, Sandra brings up Billy Graham as well. Oh, yeah, they're also interconnected. Think about how powerful, how rich they are. So many of them. Now, does that mean there's no demons? Oh, yeah, there are definitely demonic entities. I've met, I'd say, a good half a dozen that I've seen in person. And as I shared with you guys before, too, I used to be part of a paranormal research group, and it was called Eastern States Paranormal Society. And all the other members were soldiers out of Fort Jackson in Columbia, South Carolina. And we did a lot of investigations, saw a lot of things. Most things pretty, not most things were not malevolent when you get down to it. Most of the things we encountered were more like people, just a mixture of energies. But there are some that are just so dark and so negative and nasty, and they are real. But as far as what I have found, it's not the majority of them out there. The majority of them are like people. They're just kind of a mixture of different energies.
Yeah, and all those ones are the 33rd degree Masons. And I think, so this makes me curious too. They controlled certain narratives. And then, how do we know like the other things aren't also just to give us busy work, like the feed on the ISS, or, seeing certain cameras and, they show the two suns and stuff. Is that just more stuff to keep us distracted and busy from, our sole purpose, which I believe is it's interesting information. I think we need to be in the know, but it just sort of makes you wonder, is that just more of a controlled narrative type deal? Because we're catching on to all the other stuff, so they have to throw more out there. I don't know. I just don't know, but it's really wonderful to be able to talk with you guys about it. It's great.
Yeah, and the whole idea of the church, when they put together their canon, and then they decided that Gnosticism was heresy, and so they got rid of all the Gnostic texts as they could. Until we discovered the Nag Hammadi, we really didn't have many of these texts, just a few here and there. But the persecution of it was mostly because perhaps there's a lot of serious reality in that, being that the whole concept of archons, for instance, and the demiurge, and some equate that to basically, the archons are the ones that make the program, the matrix that we're in right now. And so it's really interesting, to see that philosophy.
It is, what's truly good, what's truly bad. And then I've heard, well, there is no good or bad. Um, I just like to bat around what is this world we're living in? How does it work? How can we manipulate it to make it our to become our best selves? Really, ultimately, I guess we're all in this to become the best version of ourselves, or become our higher self.
Right. And so Andrew says murdered at 33. Yeah, so we're talking about Christ at 33. Obviously George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, they were Masons as well. There's been a ton of them. Ford was a Mason. The Bushes are also in Skull and Bones, and that's another group. These secret societies are the ones that kind of control everything, and they pull people in too. Earth Day Concert says my father 33rd degree Scottish Rite. When you think about it and looking at it from the point of view of the great architect, so they're looking at it from the point of view of the great architect, but is that the architect that makes the universe, or is that the architect that makes the matrix? Makes the multiverse, or makes the matrix that we live in? Interesting stuff. Most definitely, these small groups have tremendous power, and they do recruit people. As I told you, I've had at several attempted recruitments by the Illuminati themselves, which is interesting because just like the ETs that we see always following these Rh negative bloodlines, because, in many people's opinion, this is all just a big experiment. It's a genetic experiment going on down here. And they follow us, and they, tend to see how we're progressing, how we're changing. Maybe sometimes they actually upgrade us as well.
I think, I don't talk about it too much, but there was a time when I came back from, I went to visit Monument Valley, and I came back and I was feel like I was taken up. They took me up. I don't really admit that very often. I can't believe I'm admitting it now, but they did. I was reprogrammed, and I could see the programming on like a white column of light, and it looked like Sanskrit, because now I know what Sanskrit is. I didn't really realize what it was before. And I was in like a control room, and they had to put me in that thing, that sleep paralysis mode. And in the background, I could hear equipment, machines. It was so strange. And I do believe I was reprogrammed at that point, because my whole life changed, completely changed.
Yeah, hers did completely. Like I've shared with you, just a year ago, you wouldn't recognize her because she actually looked older. And she was like 55, 60 pounds heavier, just a completely different person. Mm-hmm. So White Porcelain says, Michael, we get to the grand architect even if there is a matrix, correct? I
think so.
Okay, so take the issue of the demiurge. The demiurge is thought to have created this reality, and it's imperfect in many lines of thinking. And recognize too that, like, even in Gnosticism, there's not all Gnostics think that this is a fallen realm. That's what we predominantly hear, and we predominantly hear that the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, and Iao, we could also see it referred to as, many view it in a negative light and think it's a dark entity, a fallen archon, a mistake almost, creating this mistaken world. But not all do as well. So there was another comment too that we are in a dualistic world, which we definitely are. And yet, is that just the 3D that we're experiencing? And 4D too, because we are in the 4D realm when we are asleep. But some think it's not the case when you go higher. The higher you go, then you transcend the duality, and it's all different grades. It's just like, it's different vibrations, it's different frequencies.
It is, and everything, is vibration frequency, and you can change that information around you through how sound healing, and that's something that I've practiced and done a lot, and it's also really helped me. You got to get those old traumas out of your field, and that can be really hard to do. If you don't know what's going on, and I didn't. Um, I still have problems. I still have the emotional ups and downs. But they're a lot less. They're a heck of a lot less. And now I feel I'm on my life path more than any time ever in my entire life. Now I feel like I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and that's hopefully by sharing. Maybe I'll help someone else, overcome something. Because I used to be on a ton of medication too, prescriptions, and fighting depression most of my life. Um, and now look at me. I mean, I'm so happy. I'm married to the most wonderful man on the planet, and I can't say enough good things about my husband here. He's wonderful.
So Margaret says there's no, the statement's wrong that there is no good or bad. What was Hitler?
I know, Margaret. That's something that I even question too. Hitler, he did a lot of what we would perceive to be, and I perceive to be, horrible, evil things. But some people believe there is truly no good or bad. And I think the higher up dimensionally you get, it all becomes a learning experience, and it all becomes a journey. And I'm not justifying anyone's behavior. If they choose to do something harmful, then they're choosing that for their higher self, and at some point everybody has to deal with those consequences at some point in their life.
Right. And we're all different individuals. I think anything that infringes on another is not necessarily a positive act. And so even people that are thinking they're doing the right thing by trying to, impose their point of view, their philosophy, their religion on others, it's one thing if you just mention something and let it go. It's another thing if you just incessantly harp and just focus on that. Because again, it'll throw out energy that will eventually start to irritate somebody and set them off in different ways eventually as well. And we've seen how people have had their beliefs used in negative lights. How many suicide bombers have we seen that believe that they're doing something good by going and blowing themselves up and innocents up when they're not doing anything good? There's no beauty in that. There's no benevolence in that. And yet they think that they're going to be rewarded when they get on the other side because they've been so indoctrinated. And it's the same thing going back, what was done to the natives here in the Americas as well. And, and I know a lot of people like to deny all these things. There's people that like to deny that, the Holocaust ever happened. Deny that the Native Americans were, really part of genocide going on against the Native Americans. But we've seen it so many times. And, are those evil acts? Yeah. I mean, I would view them as evil. I think anytime you infringe on another person's will, and, especially when it's to the point of actually killing somebody or imprisoning somebody, even just keeping us in this matrix, to me, is really an evil act as far as the matrix that we see ourselves in right now. Can you imagine if we didn't have to work so much to actually just pay bills and things? The whole monetary system as a whole, to me, it's all based on ego. It's all based on ego and the fact that most people are going to be controlled by their ego. And you could always manipulate people that have large egos to do things. And that's what's been done throughout history. You see all these super rich people at the very, very top with so much money just sitting in the banks where some of these people could alleviate hunger by themselves, like a Bill Gates or some of the others. And look at the Vatican with its riches. It's so anti-Christ. Christ was not rich, not at all, not rich. And look at the wealth of the Vatican. And yet, over 1 billion people still are part of that matrix. And, I was born into it. And, Davy Jones, everybody is brainwashed into thinking they have to keep up with the Joneses. Yeah, that's part of the whole conditioning. And I think it was worse when we didn't have the internet, when we had to watch those stupid commercials all the time on the regular mainstream channels. We couldn't even flip, if you guys have been around before remotes, and you had to actually get up off your butt, walk over to the TV and turn the dial. You just listen to the commercials. So they forced them on us a little bit more than now. We could bypass the commercials with our remote, or, we could just, change and go to a different screen for a while until, that's through. So, we have more options. Hey, Osboy, good to see you, brother. We do have more options for sure. But, they're still controlling us in so many ways. Just so many ways. Aaron is asking you guys to check out Michela's new upload on the AAE channel. There's so much to keep up with, guys. There's just so much to keep up with. And I appreciate you guys sending so many links and stuff. I try to open all of them. And between Cindy and I, we try to cover as many as possible. There's just countless great channels now out there. Countless. There's so many, and there's so many that are up and coming right now that are all shedding light on this huge matrix that we truly do find ourselves in. So, to go back to this, the scientist who thinks we all exist in multiple universes. Is there a universe out there? Is there one version of our multiverse where we've already overthrown the system? And, we are living in a perfect, blissful heaven on earth scenario. Or do you guys think that because we are in this dualistic world, it'll never be the case? Obviously, we could do a lot better, right? I mean, don't you think we could do a lot better than the system that we have right now? And what if these people that have been controlling us for so long with, their matrix that they weave all around us, the systems that we are in, you guys do realize the United States is truly a corporation. When I first heard that, I thought, yeah, boy, that's really out there. But, it's actually true. And do you know that your Social Security numbers truly are bought and sold? How free are we? Are we really in any different society now than we were in feudal times with the king and the queen and everybody else's servants? Yeah, you got your ladies and your lords. They're the corporate CEOs and COOs out there. But the rest of us, aren't we outside of those castle walls? And whereas, the king's men come by and says, time to pay your taxes. And by the way, your daughter's beautiful. The king will be by, or the prince will be by, because I hear she's getting married. And of course, he has the right of first go. I mean, they had that type of stuff. It's kind of crazy, but that system, is it still in effect in some ways? As Stephanie says, yeah, US of A is a corporation. Recognize that. And, British maritime law is real. And we are still under this. Why is it all caps? All these things that, honestly, I thought they were all completely way too fringe for me. But, everything you look into, you find out, it's actually real. Just like, nonstick pans weren't good for you when they got scratched. Well, you know what? They weren't good for you. We go on down the line of everything. Fluoride, don't worry about fluoride. Well, yeah, worry about fluoride. It's just on and on. And now we got 5G, and smartphone radiation. Oh, don't worry, it's fine, it's fine. No, it's not going to be fine, guys. It's like, it's just one thing after another that we have, Braveheart style. That was actually real. And, Braveheart was quite a story. And, the poor guy, talk about suffering. That was absolutely brutal, just horrible. But it's still basically ongoing. The system is still here.
It is. And I think they knew a long time ago that they could prey on our laziness, so to speak, and get us to buy into more and more and more of the quicker technologies. And it kind of gets us spoiled in a sense where if we get sick, it's a lot easier to just go to a doctor, get a prescription, slap a Band-Aid on that symptom than it is to address your own personal health and well-being. They have things where now, you just put a little chip in your body and you can unlock your car door, you can unlock your work door, you can walk into a store and buy everything without, they prey on our laziness. And when it comes to the human body, there's certain physical things that, when you do healing work and shaman work and we work on the soul, it's not a fast process. It's just not. And they have taken that human nature laziness and they've used it against us, which is so wrong. But if you're looking at it through their eyes, they're in the business of control. We're in the business of trying to free people. I know, when I first started listening to this channel, my brain was chained down. I was too afraid to look outside the Bible for any answers. But this channel, it slowly started to wake me up. Unfortunately, one of my dear friends, Susan, she died, and I was bringing her through the system. I thought I was helping her, and I was bringing her to the doctors that wrote the prescriptions that ultimately killed her. So for me to be able to come on here and help wake people up is an absolute honor. And I just really, really appreciate all of you guys.
Yeah, we both do. It's just one of those things, but more and more people are waking up, and so it's inevitable. And of course, the powers that be know this as well, so they're doing what they can do, and that's obvious in the actions that we see. And so China is bringing 6G online, and I was going to do a video on that too. But as you just mentioned, who knows what that's going to incorporate. And we know that the Chinese model is really what they kind of want for the whole world. And I saw a horrible article talking about harvesting organs, which they do over there with the prisoners. It's just brutal. It's totally brutal. So again, we had talked about anarchy, and we've talked about what that really means. But really what needs to happen is we got to get ourselves out of this system. But, we've seen so many small groups that try to get out of the system and then they're persecuted. So setting up a new system that's viable, we have to join together at a local level as much as possible. A lot of people want to come together in groups. A lot of people really want to develop alternative ways of living, and there are a lot of, I've touched on it before, there's a lot of organic farms that offer people, shelter and board if they want to do that and do some work. And it seems like most of them, you really only work maybe 4 or 5 hours. And then the rest of the time you're free to do your own thing. Margaret, you're right. There really are no democratic governments. It's all an illusion. They're all puppets. And I totally agree with that. Big thumbs up on that statement there. And they, as Davy Jones says, they don't want all of us awake. They don't want us getting even to the point where maybe 30-40% of the population's awake, because it will really go out of control at that point. It's just part of what is going on. And this is weird and creepy. A fish with a human face spotted in a lake, and it's really creeping people out. Can that really be real? Do you guys see the face on that? Was that one of the experiments that was going on in Dulce, an underground lab, or maybe over at the Nevada test site, and then they just release it out into the public, and one of the scientists is saying, wait till somebody checks this out. It's going to make them jump. Maybe it'll give somebody a heart attack.
Yeah.
Pretty crazy. That does look pretty human.
At every angle too. Look.
Yeah. Maybe it's Photoshop.
I don't know.
Who knows?
Cool.
Maybe it was some sort of mutant from things that were released into this pond.
Yikes.
Who knows? In this world where they're growing meat in in labs, in test tubes, and everything that we're seeing going on, who knows anymore?
Anything with a face, I can't eat it, so he would be safe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So again, I want to invite anybody that's interested, come and join us over on Patreon. There's videos that go up over there that don't go on this venue. Some that we talk very, very plainly about things, even more plainly than we did today. And we have 89 Patreons right now. We're shooting to get 100 by the end of the month. And for just $1 a month, you could help support the channel, or do a one-time donation over to Ko-Fi as well. And we truly do appreciate your support. Make sure you're subscribed to EE Arts, the second channel as well. Again, as always, my friends, we so are appreciative of all your input, and we thank you guys for being part of our family.
We do. We really appreciate you guys so much, and thanks for showing up on super, super short notice.
Yes. So as always, my friends, stay safe out there. Be prepared. God bless and namaste.
Namaste, you guys.